everyone, and welcome to another deep dive. Today we're looking into storing settings in your Tkinter application.
Which can be super tricky.
It really can.
Especially when you're trying to choose between those two big contenders we always hear about, JSON files and database tables.
So we're going to try to help you figure out which one is right for your specific project.
Exactly.
And I think you might be surprised because
you might be.
We may even end up suggesting a combo approach later.
Ooh, yeah, a hybrid approach.
Hybrid approach?
We'll get there.
But
first things first.
Let's break down each of these options.
Definitely.
So you can really understand what's going on.
Yeah, what's happening under the hood.
Under the hood.
For sure.
Okay, let's unpack JSON first. I feel like it's kind of like the darling of simple configuration files. You see it everywhere.
It's everywhere.
Especially in open source projects.
Oh, for sure. And that's because it's just so easy to read and to edit.
Yeah.
Even for someone who's not a coding whiz.
Right.
Which is perfect for settings, right? Because you think about it, most preferences are just key value pairs.
Yeah.
Like theme of dark mode or language, English.
Exactly.
JSON just eats that stuff up.
It makes sense.
Yeah.
And it's so nice how that translates directly into Tkinter.
Yes.
There's this super clean way to just load those JSON settings into your app.
Yeah.
In fact, our source material even had a code snippet showing exactly how it's done.
Oh, nice.
It almost feels like cheating. It's that easy.
But don't let that fool you.
Oh.
Because JSON does have its limitations.
Oh, okay.
If you have a truly massive amount of settings data, or if multiple users need to access and change things at the same time, well, that's where databases start to flex their muscles.
Okay, databases, they always sound so intimidating.
I know.
Like something that only huge companies use.
Right.
Is it really worth it for just my little Tkinter application?
You know, it can be. Let's say you're building a game with user profiles.
Right.
You wouldn't want to try to cram all of that data,
all the progress,
all the achievements, all the settings into one giant JSON file.
Oh, gosh, no.
Right. That would be a nightmare.
It would be a nightmare to manage.
Exactly.
Okay, I'm starting to see your point.
Right.
So are databases like that super organized filing cabinet where everything has its place?
Yes.
And it can handle a lot of activity without getting all jumbled up?
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Plus, you can actually define relationships between different pieces of information, which gets really, really tough with simple JSON.
Right.
Think of it kind of like a spreadsheet.
Okay.
Where you can have different sheets that are linked together.
Right.
Based on some shared information.
Yeah.
So this is what we call relational data.
Okay.
And it lets you build these really, really sophisticated settings systems.
Okay, so databases sound really powerful.
They are.
But also a little complex.
They can be.
Is there a point where maybe JSON is still the better choice?
It could be.
I don't want to over-engineer things if I don't have to.
Yeah, that's a great question. Maybe we can figure that out by diving into a few key factors.
Okay.
First up, performance.
Oh, okay.
So for small configurations, JSON is blazing fast.
Gotcha.
But with huge data sets, databases win out.
Yeah.
Because they're just designed to handle that kind of volume.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Think of it like this. If you're just jotting down a quick grocery list, a sticky note is fine.
Right.
But if you're writing a novel, you're going to need something a little more robust.
Okay, so what about keeping those settings safe?
Okay.
What if I'm worried about my app getting corrupted or users messing things up?
Okay, so you're talking about data integrity.
Okay.
And concurrency.
Those are big words.
They are big words.
But I think I understand what you mean.
Okay, good.
So data integrity is making sure that the data is accurate and consistent?
Yes, exactly.
And databases have built-in ways to kind of protect your data from that.
They do.
Whereas JSON relies more on you as the developer to do things correctly.
Yep.
Okay, so databases are more secure in that sense.
It sounds like it.
What about concurrency?
Concurrency just means multiple users are accessing and potentially changing the settings at the same time.
Oh.
And databases are built to handle this without any problems.
Okay.
While those simple files like JSON can sometimes run into issues.
So that's something to keep in mind.
Definitely.
If your app has multiple users who might be changing settings at the same time.
Yeah, it could get messy.
Could get messy.
Imagine two people trying to edit the same sticky note at once.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that would be a problem.
Exactly.
So a database sounds like the safer bet in that case.
Probably.
But what about readability?
Oh, yeah.
I remember you said that JSON was super easy to read and edit.
Oh, yeah. It's like plain text. Anyone can open it up,
Right.
understand what's going on.
Right.
But with databases, you have to use queries to actually access and modify the data.
So is it kind of like having to ask a librarian for a specific book?
Yes.
Instead of just browsing the shelves?
Exactly.
Okay, so there's a trade-off there.
Yeah.
Easy access with JSON.
Uh-huh.
But more power and control with databases.
Right
Is there a way to, like, combine the two?
So it's fascinating that you say that because you've actually hit upon a really clever solution.
Oh.
And that is where this hybrid approach that we mentioned comes into play.
Okay.
But before we reveal all the secrets of that method,
Okay.
let's look at one more key difference between JSON and databases.
Right.
How easy are they to back up
Okay.
and to move around?
That's a good point.
So I'm guessing JSON files are pretty simple to back up.
Yeah, it's like copying a text document or something.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They're small. They're self-contained.
Right.
So you can easily copy them, move them to another computer,
Uh-huh.
even zip them up and email them.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But databases, being more complex systems, require a little more thought and planning when it comes to backups and portability.
So we've got this like epic showdown between JSON and databases,
We do,
each with their own strengths and weaknesses.
for sure,
But I'm dying to know more about this mysterious hybrid approach.
as you should be.
Is it really possible to get the best of both worlds?
It absolutely is.
Oh.
And that's exactly where we're headed next.
Okay.
Get ready to have your mind blown.
All right, I'm ready. All right, spill the beans. What's the secret to this hybrid approach?
Okay, so picture this.
Okay.
You take the simplicity and speed of JSON
Okay.
for those global settings that apply to, like, everyone.
Right.
Things like default language,
Okay.
sound volume, maybe even a welcome message.
Okay, so those go in like a nice little JSON file.
Exactly, tucked away neatly.
Okay, and then what about all the other stuff?
Yeah.
The personalized data?
Right.
That's different for each user.
That's where the database steps in.
Oh.
Think user profiles, preferences for guests, anything sensitive or unique to that individual by keeping it in the database.
Yeah.
You get all those benefits we talked about.
Right.
Scalability,
Yeah.
security,
Yeah.
the ability to handle multiple users making changes at the same time.
So it's like having these two specialized tools in your toolbox.
Exactly.
JSON for like the broad strokes,
Yeah.
and then the database for all the fine details.
Uh-huh.
I'm starting to see the appeal here.
Good.
It can definitely make your life as a developer so much easier.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Can you imagine trying to manage like hundreds or even thousands of user settings in a single JSON file?
Don't even get me started.
It would be a nightmare.
Logistical nightmare.
But by splitting things up strategically, you keep things organized and efficient.
And secure.
Do you have any real-world examples of where this hybrid approach really shines?
Absolutely. So let's go back to that game we were talking about.
Okay.
You could use JSON to store the overall game settings,
Yeah,
like sound volume or difficulty level.
Okay.
But then each player's individual progress,
Right.
achievements,
Yeah.
custom key bindings,
Yeah.
all that goes to the database,
Okay.
neatly linked to their profile.
So it's like you have the general settings control panel that affects everyone.
Yes.
And then each player gets their own like personalized dashboard
Exactly.
for fine-tuning their experience.
And you know what the beauty of this approach is?
White.
It's incredibly flexible.
Okay.
You can adapt it to all sorts of applications.
Not just games.
Not just games. Think about a productivity app.
Okay.
Global settings, like
Right.
default font size or theme,
Uh-huh.
could live in JSON,
Okay.
while individual user preferences for things like notifications,
Okay.
task organization, data syncing
Right.
are handled by the database.
Okay. I'm officially sold on this hybrid approach.
Good.
I have to admit, though, wrapping my head around all these different factors,
Oh, yeah.
like performance scalability, readability,
It's a lot.
it's a lot.
It is.
What are the key takeaways here that our listeners should really be keeping in mind when they're making these decisions for their own Tkinter apps?
That's a great question.
Mm-hmm.
It all boils down to understanding your app's specific needs
Okay.
and planning for the future.
Right.
So if you're building a simple app
Yeah.
with a handful of settings
Right.
and you don't anticipate a lot of users,
Mm-hmm.
JSON might be all you need.
Okay.
It's simple, it's fast, it gets the job done.
What are some red flags that are screaming like, hey, you need a database for this?
Okay, so if you find yourself dealing with any of these scenarios,
Good.
a database is probably the way to go.
Okay.
Lots of users,
Okay.
complex data relationships between settings,
Okay.
frequent updates or changes,
Okay.
and any situation where data security is like paramount.
So basically, if things start feeling clunky or you're worried about keeping your settings organized and secure,
Yep.
it's time to level up.
Yeah, time to level up to a database.
And of course, there's always the hybrid approach, which gives you that amazing flexibility to use both JSON and a database.
In perfect harmony.
It's like having your cake and eating it too.
It is.
This has been such an eye-opening deep dive. I feel like I've gone from feeling clueless about storing settings to having this whole arsenal of strategies at my disposal.
Awesome.
But before we wrap up,
yes,
I know that our expert team always likes to throw in a little brain teaser.
I was wondering when this was coming.
To keep our listeners pondering.
Ooh, I like this.
Are you ready for it?
Hit me with it. I love a good challenge.
Okay, here's the curveball. How would the choice between JSON and a database change if the application needed to share settings across multiple devices or platforms?
Whoa.
Yeah.
That is a great question.
Right.
Suddenly, we're not just talking about storing settings.
Right.
We're talking about syncing them across an entire ecosystem.
It's a whole other ballgame.
It is.
Yeah.
And that brings a whole new set of challenges and considerations into play.
Like what kind of rabbit hole are we diving into now?
Well, for starters,
okay,
we have to think about where those settings will live.
Okay.
Do we store them locally on each device?
Right.
Or do we need a centralized cloud solution?
Right.
And then how do we ensure that changes made on one device are reflected on all the others?
So we need to think about things like cloud storage,
Yes.
APIs for communication between devices.
Exactly.
Maybe even different data formats that work seamlessly across various platforms.
You got it.
See, this is why I love these deep dives.
Me too.
They always leave you with more questions than answers.
Always.
But in a good way.
In a good way.
It's like opening a door to a whole new world of possibilities and challenges.
And that's the beauty of software development.
Yeah.
It's a constant process of learning, exploring, pushing the boundaries of what's possible.
All right. So we tackled JSON.
We did.
Explored the power of databases.
Yes.
Even dipped our toes into this wild world of multi-device synchronization.
A little bit, yeah.
I think it's safe to say that our listeners have a lot to chew on.
Absolutely. But before we send them off on their coding adventures, let's take a moment to recap the key takeaways from our deep dive today.
Sounds good. So what's the TLDR for choosing the best way to store those pesky application settings?
Okay, so if you have a small, simple Tkinter app with just a few settings, JSON is your go-to.
Yeah, keeps it nice and easy.
Exactly.
Easy to read.
Perfect for those quick wins.
But if you're dreaming bigger, multiple users, tons of settings, frequent updates,
then a database is the way to go.
Okay.
It's a little more work up front.
Right.
But you'll thank yourself later.
I bet.
When your app is handling all of that data like a champ.
And, of course, we can't forget about our all-star.
Yes.
The hybrid approach.
The hybrid approach.
You can mix and match JSON and a database to get the best of both worlds.
To create a setting system that's both elegant and powerful.
It really is the best of both worlds.
It is.
There's no one-size-fits-all answer.
Nope.
The best solution depends on your specific needs, your app's architecture, and your vision for the future.
Exactly.
You've given our listeners so much to think about.
I hope so.
But before we say goodbye, I want to touch on something you mentioned earlier.
Okay.
That whole multi-device sync thing.
Oh, yeah.
It's a bit mind-boggling.
It is. It definitely adds a layer of complexity.
It does.
Suddenly, you're not just storing settings.
Right.
You're orchestrating this symphony of data across potentially dozens of devices and platforms.
So where do you even begin to tackle that kind of challenge?
You have to start by asking yourself some really fundamental questions.
Right.
Okay, so where will those settings live on each device or in the cloud?
Right.
And how will you handle conflicts?
Oh, yeah.
If a user changes a setting on one device while offline,
those are good points.
These are the kind of design decisions that can really make or break your setting system.
Especially in a multi-device world.
Especially.
It sounds like you need a whole new set of tools and strategies.
You do?
Just to manage that kind of synchronization.
You're talking about cloud storage solutions.
Yeah.
APIs that allow devices to communicate.
Right.
And maybe even some platform-specific considerations.
It sounds complicated.
It can be.
But it also sounds pretty cool.
Oh, it's very cool.
It's funny, we started this deep dive talking about storing settings.
Right.
And now we're talking about building these complex interconnected systems.
I know.
That span the globe.
It's amazing.
That's the beauty of technology, I guess.
It is.
It's always evolving.
Always.
Pushing us to think bigger.
Yeah.
Explore new possibilities.
Exactly. And as developers,
yeah,
it's our job to stay ahead of the curve.
Right.
To anticipate the needs of our users and build applications that are both powerful and user-friendly.
Well said.
Thank you.
And on that note,
Good.
I think it's time to wrap up this epic journey
It has been quite a journey.
into the world of application settings.
We've covered a lot of ground.
We covered everything from JSON to databases.
We did.
Hybrid approaches.
Yeah.
And even touched on those mind-bending challenges of multi-device synchronization.
Just a little bit.
I think our listeners have a lot to think about.
They do, but I have no doubt they'll walk away with a deeper understanding of how to build those really robust and user-friendly setting systems.
For their Tkinter applications.
Yeah.
And of course, if they have any aha moments, burning questions, or even alternative approaches they've discovered.
I love those.
We encourage them to share their insights in the comments or on social media.
Yes, please do.
We're always eager to learn from our community.
Always learning.
That's all the time we have for today.
Okay.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.
Until next time, keep coding, keep creating, and keep diving deep.